I mean, in 1969, the computer was still half the size of the room. Mm-hmm. So, and that's one thing.
The same computer that's like not even an iPhone.
Right, exactly. Or the computing power that's in a singing birthday card. So what Kubrick got wrong in 2001, in the midst of all the rest that was visionary, was the assumption that the future would be one big computer controlling the one big ship. The notion of distributed computing, where you would have the power of a mainframe sitting on your hip, was unimagined at the time. So yeah, things got systematically more powerful, but that's a natural progression of technology that's been going on since the Industrial Revolution.
The manned space flight is the only thing that hasn't advanced. If you watch these movies from the 1970s, they talked about 2010. My God, there's going to be space stations on the moon, and there was Space 1999. Do you remember that show?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
God,
yeah.
I mean, but the reality is, our manned space exploration ended.
I'll tell you why.
Money.
Yes, that's the clean, clear answer, but there's a more subtle answer. All right. When we went to the moon, everyone assumed, because of the way it was marketed, there was the profiles in Life magazine of each of the astronauts, and you saw their families, and then the president said we should do it.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
And it was this grand mission from NASA, a civilian space agency, and the World's Fair in New York, 1964, was all about inventing a future. So we were living that romance. All right. What we were not reminding ourselves is that the only reason why we went to the moon is because we were at war with Russia, with the Soviet Union. That is the only reason at all. If you don't carry that motivation with you, and you're only thinking that this is simply the next technological thing to do, that when we learn that Russia's not going to the moon, therefore we have no reason to continue and we stop, you cry foul and you say, well, wait a minute, how about the future? How about Mars? And how about the rest of that? Well, the rest of that was not ever in the plan, unless Russia had planned to do it. And so it was not a natural flow of what our technology would have done, because it didn't flow out of our economic creativity. It came out of our urge to not die. And so when you have that scenario, of course we didn't go past the moon after 1972. We were no longer competing with Russia to do that.
I understand what you're saying, and if I was more conspiratorially minded, I would argue that that's a nice, convenient thing to say, but the reality is we still kept up as far as other avenues of military, whether it's building better bombs or faster planes.
Of course.
And it was all about military superiority.
Of course.
Like, wouldn't we be the first to set up a base on the moon? Wouldn't we be the first to...
It's not necessary unless Russia does.
Right.
In fact, most of what we did in space was reactive to Russia. We were not the first in space, Russia was. We weren't the first to send a life form into space, Russia was. Russia sent a dog. We weren't the first humans in space, Russians were. Russians even put the first black person in space. It was a Cuban cosmonaut. The achievements in space, well, what we did, we got to the moon first. And then we said, we win. And so we have repainted that era in our memory as we are the pioneers, and we did it because we explore. No, we did it because that's a nice after-the-fact window dressing you can put on that achievement, but we did it because we were at war.